Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, but specifically, we're going to discuss the Bitcoin dominance and the general expectations over the next several months. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Well, now that it is September, I figured it would be worthwhile for an update on the Bitcoin dominance. The reason being is because our last update on the dominance was back at about August 3rd. And in this video, we talked about how the dominance of Bitcoin was likely going to continue decreasing until September. And then once we get around the time frame of the Ethereum merge, we would likely see an inflection point, right, in the dominance where it would start to go back up again. Sort of drew out a couple paths here, right? One where it only went down to maybe 40 something percent, a little over 40, and then another one perhaps where it went down to maybe like 38, 39%. Now that it is September, the Bitcoin dominance is still sitting at a relatively low level, right? It's only at 40.5%. It has not made any significant move to the upside, obviously, other than today. The where it's up to about 40.5%. It is up today, but I would still like to see it up a lot higher. Going back to what we discussed in this video is that it tends to reverse directions in September. So like when it was going down over here, the dominance started going up in 2017, right? You can sort of see that inflection there. When it was going up over here, then started to go down in 2018, and then in 2019, the dominance was going up, and then in September is where we had the inflection. It started going back down, and so on and so forth. You can see that around the September timeframe is where you'll see a change in the general direction of the Bitcoin dominance. Okay, now we are coming into the September timeframe. It's September 9th, so we're getting close to about the halfway point in September. If you look at this on the Heikin-Ashi candles, we haven't really seen a huge change at this point, right? Like at this point, there's no reason to get that excited because it hasn't actually reversed course yet. And in fact, the Bitcoin dominance hasn't even seen an overshadow on the weekly Heikin-Ashi candle since June. Okay, so it's been quite a long time frame for the dominance where it has in fact been going down. And you could arguably say that it's sort of like it's sort of touching this trend line down here, and maybe finding some support. But the reason I wanted to talk about this again is because we are sort of coming into some very similar circumstances that we've seen in the past, right? Where the Bitcoin dominance bottoms at the same time where the Ethereum dominance is hitting like a fairly high resistance level that it historically struggles to really get much above, right? So you can see the divergence in this, the dominance of Bitcoin down, the dominance of Ethereum up. But we saw the exact same thing over here, right? In early to mid 2018, right? The Bitcoin dominance down, the Ethereum dominance up. And the Ethereum dominance over here peaked at just over 20%, which is it's just below where the Ethereum dominance just went. Okay, so I do think it's an important consideration in all this. Say, is history repeating, right? Are we just going to see the Bitcoin dominance start to go up after the merge, where a lot of the altcoins then start losing value against Bitcoin as we go into the end of the year, which is actually what we saw in the last market cycle as well. Of course, we didn't have the merge at that point to generally look at. But I mean, there definitely is some ebb and flow to this market cycle, and you can see, I mean, the dominance of Bitcoin here is coming very, very close. I mean, if not just a little bit lower than where it sort of had its secondary test back in 2018. Now, could Ethereum's Bitcoin valuation have a little bit more juice as we actually go into the merge? Maybe, but I do think there is a strong possibility that we're going to see the dominance finally break back up to the upside. One of the interesting things too to consider is that the dominance right now is going up, and then Bitcoin is actually up about 10% right now as I'm making this video. By the time you see it, when I post it, it might be 12 hours later or something. But right now, the price of Bitcoin is up about 10%. The dominance is up about it's up from like 38% or 39% up to about 40.5%. I think there are some interesting things here in comparing this, because if you also go look at things like, say, Ether USD, it was the same exact move that saw Ethereum's Bitcoin valuation go to that level back in 2018. If you take a measured move on Ether USD in 2018, it also saw about 128% move or so. And the same thing could be said this time as well. The same sort of move, a potential rejection off of the bull market support band by Ether USD. This happened in April or May of 2018. This one happened in August and September of 2022, where you're seeing the same type of move, the back test sort of the Bitcoin dominance, a retest of sort of some of these highs for the Ethereum dominance. You're sort of seeing the same thing play out this cycle as well. So now, my conviction on the overall trend or the overall direction on the Bitcoin dominance remains unchanged. The biggest, the biggest thing for me is that altcoins are still, I think, incredibly risky when the Bitcoin dominance is this low. That is something that we've seen time and time again, right? Like when the Bitcoin dominance is down at these levels, I think a lot of times people sort of have this natural tendency to think that it has to break to the downside. And maybe it does, right? Like maybe this is the time that it does, but I think there's a stronger possibility that it actually breaks back up to the upside. And that's more or less what I'm looking for over the next several months as we head into the end of the year. And that's actually what happened back over here. I mean, if you look towards, this occurred in June, July, and August, and maybe a little bit of September, back over here in 2018. Sort of this move right here. So it lasted maybe about 3 months or so. If we were to repeat this same type of move, obviously it's not going to be the exact same thing, but if you were to repeat a similar type move, then you're generally talking about it sort of exploding going into the end of the year, just like it did somewhat over here. What's interesting is that during this time frame, if we compare Bitcoin USD to this, and let me switch this over to a logarithmic scale, you'll notice that Bitcoin's dominance started to really go up here, and then it still went up even into this Bitcoin pump, right? And it still went up even when Bitcoin dumped back down, and then it kept going up even when Bitcoin pumped again, and it kept going up when Bitcoin dumped again. Okay, so you can see the Bitcoin dominance is going up during that entire time, and arguably that's the phase that we are about to enter, where the dominance is going to start to go up, and maybe Bitcoin USD is sort of in a phase like this, where it's sort of bouncing around in this area. Maybe it even goes higher. I don't know, but I do think some choppy behavior by Bitcoin will eventually lead to the dominance going higher. And I think one of the reasons that it's been prolonged this cycle is because of the merge. And obviously there's been a lot of hype around that. So we'll see what happens over the coming months. My speculation, dubious as it may be, is still that the dominance should head much higher before ultimately getting to more healthy conditions, before we can sustain a true alt season. I mean, everyone talks about alt season and whatnot, but in order to get like a true alt season like we've seen in bull markets past, a lot of times you need a lot of the juice that comes from already having a dominance relatively high. Now, over the macro scale, I would say that the dominance is in a downtrend. I don't really think there's too much debate about that. I mean, if you sort of just look at the general direction of this, it seems like it's arguably down, though sort of play devil's advocate, maybe it's building towards something that we're only just seeing the beginnings of. Like maybe it comes back up and then comes back down, and then it's just in this range for quite a long period of time. But again, you guys know my thoughts on the matter. We'll see if we get this surge in the Bitcoin dominance going into the end of the year. Obviously, it still has a lot to prove, considering it's only at 40%. But we'll see how it pans out. And again, with the Ethereum merge coming up next week, I'm not saying that you won't see any type of renewed interest on the Ether Bitcoin pair. I just think it's getting really close, if not already there, to where it's starting to flip back the other way. And you'll see it sort of do a similar type move as we saw back in 2018, right? Like a rejection off the bull market support band, and ultimately where the Ether Bitcoin valuation goes back down. And then hopefully, I mean, if it does do that, then I will become a big Ether bull again as we hopefully gear up for the next cryptocurrency market cycle. Try to bear with me as we get through the next phase of this market. It's probably going to get really choppy as we go into the end of the year. We'll see where it spits us out, in the next 3 to 4 months or so, and then hopefully we can get a better idea as to what the future market cycle holds. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.